okay, yeah, some kids get abducted. Some kids get hit by cars. But those things aren't going to stop.
Tracking your kid has never been easier.
Yeah.
And parents have never been scareder.
Safety nets are bullshit.
You're actually hurting your kid because you're depriving them of the experiences that they need to survive. And spun up, turned completely bright red, and balls of molten copper came flying out of it.
You know, like, sometimes you need to get punched. Already drinking. Welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Casey Rochford, and we'd love it if you'd like and share, and then subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell so you get notifications when we put stuff up, because we put stuff up like twice a week.
At least. Yeah. So I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and don't forget that we write our own music. And at the end of every episode, for the most part, we have something new and original that we've written. And if you like it, you can pick it up at patreon.com/KSMvidcast, and it'll help support the show, because we're not going to get any kind of ad revenue from most of the things we talk about. So
not anytime soon, anyway.
Yeah. So the patrons would really help out a lot. So I think, I did a few episodes recently, or minute microscopies and stuff like that. And it's kind of a big deal to me, talking about a lot of this protecting the kids, passing legislation to protect kids kind of stuff, the whole vaping thing and other things like that. And I think we should probably talk about that. That kind of warrants its own whole episode.
Yeah, I usually handle the uploads of our episodes and stuff, and in the last few months, I've been seeing this thing about COPPA, and it's making me, check these boxes that we're not pandering to kids or including kids in our videos, and if we do, then there's all kinds of restrictions, like you can't have comments on the video, you can't have live chats, you can't have advertising revenue, you can't basically do anything that you rely on. Like, let's say all you do is YouTube channels for kids or something. Now your form of income is going away, basically.
Yeah, exactly, because the ad revenue supports the funding of kids content, these kind of kids channels. Yeah, COPPA. I did an episode or a minute microscopy about COPPA and some of the shenanigans surrounding that. And they a lot of these things center around the idea of protecting kids, and I have a lot of thoughts on this, because things are way different now than it was when you and I were growing up. And now I call you old man, but I'm older than you, so.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't want to be one of those old timers that's like, kids just have it too easy today or whatever. But, I even growing up in our age, we saw some of this with Joe Camel. They thought that was pandering to kids. And, I never saw Joe Camel and I was like, oh, hey, I want to smoke. That looks really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a cartoon character.
Yeah.
And anybody that's watched hentai or however you pronounce it, knows that cartoons can be definitely not for adults.
Not for
And
kids, you mean?
yeah, um, but so cartoon characters can appeal to all ages, and so yeah, that's kind of an annoying thing that I remember the whole Joe Camel thing that they were like, well, it's clearly targeting kids, and I thought, well, how? What's
Yeah.
citation needed?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
um,
I mean,
I,
it's like you have to tick a whole lot of boxes to be, targeting kids, I think. Because, their attention spans require more than just, a cartoony character.
well,
you know, there's,
and
there's got
yeah,
to be simplicity. There's got to be lots of colors. There's got to be like chipper music. There's all these things that go into children's programming that are kind of like a formula.
yeah, exactly. And you could say like something, an example of what I would say clearly targets children would be a show like Teletubbies. Um, it's something that really is abhorrent to adults.
Yeah.
Me as an adult, I hate that show. It just, God, just it's like nails on a chalkboard. It's so awful. And but kids love it. Joe Camel, on the other hand, or some of the things that people equate with pandering to children or targeting children, it appeals to multiple age groups. People that are 12 or 10 or 8, all the way up to people that are they're in their 60s or 70s. I just because it's animated doesn't make it for kids.
Yeah, look at Family Guy. I mean,
Yeah, oh yeah. Family Guy is a good example. That's totally not for kids.
mhm.
Like even the dialogue and the humor and stuff is not something that kids like, but adults do. Um, Bob's Burgers is another good one. And so, yeah, I think this simplification, because COPPA, if you look at the rules around the whole COPPA thing, um, it it's like you had mentioned, like the songs and the bright colors and the flashy graphics and stuff. Well, it isn't. You can't. You can't like explain it in that way. It's not that simple. Like it's almost something. It's kind of like saying what is beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
you.
yeah, I also possibly described the inside of a gay bar, but
Yeah, yeah, and so to say what is beautiful, well, you'll know it when you see it.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing. What is for kids? Well, you'll know it when you see it.
Well,
So
and that's the scary part is all these fines that can come down on the creators. It's all like you can check your box that says no, I'm not appealing to kids, but if they do their scan and they decide that you're appealing to kids, then you get hit with these hefty fines. And I mean, it's kind of nice that you can go into your like global settings and say, look, our show is not pandering to kids, so I don't have to check this box every time. So it's automatically checked because our show is clearly not for kids. Isn't that right,
yeah.
Ruth? Yeah, that's totally right. This show isn't for kids at all.
Oh, great. We just got a $42,000 fine. Thanks a lot,
Hey,
Casey.
can I know I'm only 20, but can I have a sip of that beer? Oh, sure, Rudy, here you go. Whoa, that's the tits. Yeah.
How about a smoke? Yeah, and I think if anybody were to somehow find that our channel is for kids by their broadly defined arbitrary definition, I'd say you're smoking crack. Like there's no way. But yeah, so okay, let's go into this whole idea about protecting kids. Um, I because when I was a kid, there weren't school zones or anything. You kind of had to. They taught you, hey, look both ways before you cross. You had crossing guards and stuff. There weren't flashing lights and cameras and stuff protecting the kids.
Mhm.
Um, parents let their kids walk to school when they were really young, like under 10, walk to school. When I was that age, I would wander around in the woods with my friends. One of my friends and I, we built a raft and crawled across a swamp with it to an island that we saw. And, my mom was pissed, not because we were unattended, but because my clothes were covered in mud. That was the thing that made her mad. And nowadays, it's totally not like that.
Yeah, I remember driving way out to Buckley. I had a friend that lived out in the sticks, right? And we were like walking down some country road by ourselves in the middle of the day, and this like punk kid that was a couple of years older than us, he comes up riding up on some kid's bike, like a little kid's bike. and he was like, "Hey, you guys shouldn't go. You're not supposed to go into that property." And like we're just like on the other side of this fence, like looking into the property, and we're like, "We're not, dude." I saw a car coming up the highway, and I was like, "Oh, you should probably move out of the way. That car's coming." And he like moves off the road, and then after the car drives by, he gets off the bike and he walks over and he's like, "Don't tell me what to do," and he decks me right in the chin. And I remember I was in like 5th grade or something, and I remember I like kind of like got knocked over this way, and I like turned around and I was like, and my buddy was already like hauling ass, like getting away, and I'm like, "Thanks, dude." But this guy like got on his bike and took off, and I followed him home. And then we went and got our parents. My dad went over there, and it was, it was entertaining, and it's a great story, and it's like experience, like sometimes you need to get punched.
Well, and those experiences mold you. They're not necessarily going to destroy you forever. You're not going to be like 80 years old and like, well, why did I walk down that highway? Or, why did I build that raft? It ruined me. Hey, you're better for it.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, yeah, some kids get abducted. Some kids get hit by cars. But those things aren't going to stop, just because you're putting these safety measures in place. It's
no, and that's something I like to anybody out there. The world is a much safer place than we're led to believe it is. Yes, things happen. There are things like child trafficking and abductions and stuff like that, but it's so tiny. I remember when I was a kid, my mom was so scared, even though she let us run wild, actually, but she was so afraid of that whole stranger danger thing. Like there's going to be some white van and they're going to be like, "Hey, want to play with my puppy?" And then they take you. That never happens. Like so rare.
To be fair, we grew up in the same city that Ted Bundy grew up in, so
yeah. Well, but we were kids. Ted Bundy didn't have anything to do with kids.
Yeah.
But the thing is, statistically, it's so rare. I mean, it would be being worried about child trafficking or being abducted or something like that. Like, really seriously being worried would be akin to being worried about being hit by a meteorite coming down. Like the odds are so slim. Just live your life. Live your life. And don't worry about that stuff. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of caution. And certainly, especially when you have really young kids, it's important for parents to educate the kids about what to do. Be cautious around strangers and, look both ways before you cross the road. But yeah, there are not a swarm of white vans with puppies and candy bars trying to abduct kids. It's just not a thing. Most abductions of kids happen by their own parents. It's not somebody you don't know, but it makes it for a great story on the news. And so, well, what happens? The news sensationalizes it, and people watch it and they freak out and they're like, oh my God, I've got to protect my kid. And
Yep.
what you're doing, you're actually hurting your kid because you're depriving them of the experiences that they need to survive.
Yeah, I was just going to say we should talk about the future impacts of what's going on here, because like, I don't think there's any forward thinking going on here. You're taking away um, something that's actually very crucial to building a foundation for critical thinking, and the
Yeah.
ability to use analogical thinking to say, like, oh, I'm supposed to look both ways when I cross the road. I should probably do the same at the railroad tracks. I should probably do the same when I'm pushing my cart through Costco. You know, just like anywhere from, you know, life-saving uh, skills to just plain courtesy can come from the knowledge that you are out there fending for yourself, and you don't have these safety nets. And safety nets are bullshit. It, so it's like I don't, I really don't like the you know, I don't want to make it sound like I just want put children in danger or anything, but it's really not that dangerous.
No, it's not. And I have some ideas on that, and we'll get into that.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
maybe.
especially in this day and age, I mean, we've got like the electric eye is everywhere. You know, Big Brother's watching everything.
Yeah,
You know,
actually, no, and that's a good point. And you know, Big Brother is fine, but Big Mother is another thing. Like, as a parent today, you can go on eBay or Amazon, whatever, choose your poison. You could go on to one of those sites and buy a tracking device for your kid for like $20, and you
mhm.
know exactly where they are. And so, you know, that's something that was unheard of before. And so even with this stuff now, people are even more cautious. And it's
Yeah,
like, you could totally track your kid. If the white van grabbed the kid and drove to New Mexico, um, or some other country, you'll know exactly where the kid is. And
yeah. It's like, I mean, we can do this with pets too,
mm-hmm.
where they're like chipped, and you can basically, you know, I mean, that's not like a GPS chip necessarily. It's more like a RFID or something.
Yeah, RFID. Yeah.
But you know, I mean, you could theoretically do a GPS chip with your kid, which is
Well,
bordering on pretty scary. But
that's true. But I mean, you could do like a smartwatch or something like that that reports the position. So it's like, it's just a watch.
mhm.
Um, or there's a number of different techniques, but yeah, tracking your kid has never been easier,
Yeah,
and parents have never been scareder, which makes no sense.
yeah. There was I don't remember his name. I think he's a rapper. I can't keep up with all these rappers. Um,
Well, they keep dying.
yeah. um, anyway, he, like, you probably heard of this. It was in the news a little while ago. He takes his daughter in regularly to check that her hymen is still in place.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
what?
Wow.
Yeah, like that's overbearing
That's
parenting.
hardcore.
Yeah,
And we did talk about that, the whole like sex thing. Like, yeah, I think that my God, I mean, that's super invasive too.
yeah. I mean, I, that I hate to break it to you, buddy, but that is not going to make your kid not want to have sex. It's probably going to make her want to piss you off. And
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I was going to say that if you tell a kid not to do something, the very first thing they're going to want to do is do whatever you told them not to do.
yeah,
Because it's the climbing out of the nest phase. You're rebelling, you're finding your own direction, and what better way than to defy the parental figures that, or figure that raised you, you know,
hmm,
defy authority, that kind of thing.
yeah,
um
yeah.
yeah, so
That's just child nature. I mean, okay, yes, we've got two dudes who have no children that that they know of. I can't speak for you. I don't know.
Oh, I probably have like 100 kids by this point.
Okay, Gene Simmons.
uh,
But we're sitting here dispensing, parenting advice, and we're not parents. This is a valid point, sure, but it doesn't mean that we aren't keen observers of the human condition. So,
well,
what we have to say is still valid.
no, we do, and the thing is, we were kids too. I
Mhm.
remember. I haven't forgotten what it was
I
like to
have
be a kid.
18 years experience of being a kid.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I grew up, and I remember all of those things, and I remember the moments that changed me and defined who I am today. And so I think it's valid because, um, you know, yeah, okay, we can't we can't know what it's like to be a parent, but we can know what it's like to be a kid. And I think that, you know,
Yeah.
that's the focus of the discussion here. That
And there's this thing called empathy that allows you to, I don't know, kind of put yourself in someone else's shoes and feel what they're feeling. So it's maybe a little muted, but I can wrap my head around what it might feel like to be a parent. So it's not like I'm completely clueless.
yeah, I mean, I have friends that have kids, and I pay attention
Yeah.
to that stuff too.
Yeah, it's like we're around kids, so
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
not responsible for their every move. That's all.
Yeah. So there's this movement that kind of started in response to a lot of this kind of hyper protectiveness that's been going on for a while. Um, Free range kids. I don't
What?
know if you, yeah, free range kids. So it's like free range chickens or something, you know?
All organic, no
Yeah,
GMO.
yeah, exactly. No, the idea is that you should let kids have these kinds of experiences and kind of like there's a point. Of course there is a threshold, and it's individual. It's not something that is a number. You can't say, well, if you're below 8 you could do this, but or you can't do this, but above that then you can. No, it's kind of you got to feel it out and be a proper parent and understand your kid. But the idea is parents let their kids kind of roam free and explore and make mistakes and get in a little bit of risky situations, but not in like white van situations, but the typical risky shit. When I was a kid, me and my friend were running around this pallet that was in the backyard, and and he like bumped into me and I fell down, and a staple from the pallet, which was like that long, that was sticking out, went through my hand.
Oh, jeez.
Um, and I just pulled it out, and I was like, "Wow, it's not bleeding." Those are the kinds of experiences that kids should have. That's just one of many, but there is a movement to allow kids within a certain within reason to kind of be themselves and explore and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Of course, the nanny state comes in and says, no, 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 you can't do that. And some of the parents that have let their kids, like, say, walk to school when they're 10 or something like that, or stay at home when they're 8 or whatever, that kind of thing, go into the woods and stuff. They've been fined or jailed in some cases for that, for child neglect or other such laws. Abuse,
Yeah.
which it's like, no, how is education abuse?
Yeah.
You educate yourself. That's how it works. Yeah.
And then, like, they don't give their kids vaccinations and they don't consider that child abuse. I mean, they're like, oh, well, you get a religious pass.
That's a good point. Yeah, yeah. It's hypocritical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as a kid who grew up really shy and reserved and bullied, you know, I didn't get into martial arts until well, just a couple of years ago, actually. And I really think that that's something that, you know, little kids should actually get into. And I mean, my parents weren't against taking me to martial arts. I just never really committed to it. But I really wish I had, because um, there's so much you can learn from it. There's discipline, and there's an element of spirituality, and most importantly, if some, you know, danger approaches you, you have the tools in your toolkit to handle it. You know,
Yeah.
or at least have a fighting chance. You know, like if a little kid is about to be abducted by a stranger and has some martial arts skills, there is a higher chance that that kid is going to punch the dude in the nuts, or, you know, find some way of escaping, you know, using some cunning, you know, escape strategy. Like especially, I really highly recommend ninjutsu. If you can find a nearby Bujinkan dojo, they're spread throughout the country. I really recommend it, and they usually do kids classes. Um,
Yeah, or Krav Maga is another one
Krav
that's
Maga. Oh yeah, that's a
yeah.
Russian hardcore martial art.
It's yeah,
Yeah,
like take a gun out of somebody's hands and turn it around on them. Yeah, that
and like bend it.
yeah, exactly. And
But no,
yeah, they
like,
teach kids too. Yeah.
yeah, it's really vital that, I mean, most people that know martial arts never need to use it. It's
Well,
not
and
like it's not
that
like it's going to incite violence.
no,
It,
in fact, it's sort of like, you know, me being a firearms owner, I'm less inclined to be violent and more inclined to be peaceful because of that, because I have the tool to basically extinguish a life.
yeah,
So I'm gonna think twice about it. And it's the same thing with martial arts. It actually teaches temperance,
yeah,
and you get a little bit more. Yeah, I think it does make for a more peaceful interaction, more peaceful society.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, where I'm going with this, you know, I don't want to make it a martial arts commercial or anything, but I'm trying to make the point that hiding the true nature of the world from your kids is not doing them any favors. Teaching them the true nature of the world and preparing them for it is exactly what they need. Because, like I've said this before, I have the philosophy of preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. You know,
Yeah.
if you are prepared and you have the tools to defend yourself, with just yourself, you know, like if you were taken advantage of in the shower or something, you need to know how to defend yourself without a knife or a gun or any, you know, like you need to be able to find, you need to have the instinct to grab the shower bar and use it as a boken, you know, like
Yeah.
yeah, it's things like that that I don't think we're really instilling in kids today, because they think Superman's going to come down and save them.
Well, yeah, and parents sheltering kids to the effect that they have been, it creates this like boy in the bubble effect. Like you haven't been exposed to anything hazardous, so you have no defenses against it. And you gain those defenses by learning. Sometimes, every once in a while, it results in something really, really shitty, like a kid being abducted or raped or murdered or something like that. But the vast majority of those situations improves the situation.
Hmm.
You become a better person, more able to handle the real world. And, you know, what you were saying a minute ago, I think being honest is important. Giving kids facts about the real world, like, hey, this is how it is, and this is what you're going to have to be dealing with, and not candy coating it like the world is rainbows and unicorns and it's going to be so great. No, it's neither great nor awful. It's kind of in the middle. It's just the place we live, and there's dangers for sure, and you should be ready for them. And there's awesome things, and you should appreciate him. I mean, that's how it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's really well said, actually. I don't know if I can add to that.
So well, thanks. Yeah. Going back to the free range kids thing, like I remember reading an article. Actually, it was an article with an embedded video. It's this whole like dangerous playgrounds thing. There's a few of them around. Yeah. So to let people know who have no idea what this is, these are playgrounds that are not necessarily safe. It's like there's tools like saws and hammers and pieces of wood and stuff you could build stuff with. And kids are kind of, they're
oily
supervised.
rags next to a lighter.
Yeah, oily rags. No, it's not necessarily 100% safe. Like there's risks, but they're supervised. The parents are there and they're kind of watching the kids, but there's stuff to do and stuff to build, and you get to make things and cut things apart and do stuff. Because I did that as a kid, and that's how I got totally into engineering. And you talking about your experiences of being bullied and stuff like that, and I think if you didn't have that experience, how would it affect who you are? Would you be a different person, more placid and less inclined to do things?
Absolutely. Like I don't regret anything that's happened in my past because it's made me what I am today. Like I know for sure if I wasn't bullied, I'd probably be a complete nobody, you know?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking like art, the music that you write and stuff is a product of those experiences. Like those kinds of things poke their way into the stuff that you create. Same with me, because I was I was a nerdy kid, like picked on and all that kind of stuff. And I don't, again, I don't regret it and I don't resent it. I appreciate it. I realize like, well, that's how it was. There were some people, and I can't, if I was picked on by somebody that was in their 60s, I'd maybe have a little bit resentment, but I was picked on by contemporaries, like little kids like me. They're stupid ass idiots like myself. I can't fault them for that.
Well, you know what? I think because I endured the bullying for a couple of years before I just ended up going to a public school where, I had this preconceived notion that people were going to be worse, and they were actually a lot nicer than they were in Catholic school. That's a lot to chew on, but
yeah. I never went to Catholic school, but I did go to a Christian private school, and it wasn't nearly as bad as what I've heard from people talking about the Catholic school system. But then again,
but
those experiences are still valuable.
Yeah.
Like as long as you don't, internalize it and dwell on it too much. Like you kind of just have to let go.
Yeah, I certainly went through that. Like that internalization was a huge part of my childhood, and it's probably a lot of the reason why you wouldn't know it watching the show, but I'm not the biggest chatterbox. I'm not very good at small talk, but you give me a topic and I won't shut up. But what I was saying is that if I hadn't endured that bullying, I don't know that I could have beaten cancer. I don't know that I would have had that perseverance. I wouldn't have had the life experience to show me that there is an end to suffering. There's a light at the end of the tunnel if you just keep powering through it, and just take deep breaths, and 1 minute at a time, and
holy shit, dude, that like that's good. No, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, not saying people should go out and bully their peers to make them like be able to beat cancer or anything, but I mean, interactions happen, and people get people get at odds with each other, and fights might happen, and bullying might happen, and those aren't good things, but people need to um, take them in the moment. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
by
and
people I mean kids and anyone, but kids especially when they're learning really need to have that life experience, good or
sure,
bad.
and put it into perspective too. Like, how significant really is this? And it's really hard when you're 8 to have perspective of somebody in their whatever's I am. But the it isn't a big deal. Like, all the stuff you deal with when you're a kid is nothing. Life is actually really, really good being a kid. When you have to pay bills and pay taxes and deal with regulations and all this kind of nonsense and bank accounts and stuff, like, you're going to be wishing you were 8 again.
Hey
And
kids, being grown up totally sucks. You shouldn't. You should really hit the bottle. I don't know.
good
Don't
advice.
no don't
No,
don't do that.
no. It's yeah,
You know what, we say a lot on this show that the best teacher is failure, and having bad experiences as a kid is a form of failure.
yeah.
You failed at that particular social interaction. You got bullied. You didn't stick up for yourself. You didn't have the wittier retort. Whatever it is that made you feel bad in that moment, that's building character. It's not
No, that's a
killing you.
really good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's something I think.
Wait,
Oh
I
man,
should take that back. It
yeah.
does kill some kids. Like, bullying sucks, and some
Mhm.
kids commit suicide from it, and that's bullshit. Um,
I
so like, if you see bullying, stick up for your buddy or stick up for the kid if you're a teacher. Like, I had teachers watch me get spit on, and they did nothing.
Wow.
Through that.
I was going to talk about that because there is kind of a propensity to commit suicide over bullying
Yeah.
or other such things, and it's such a sad
Yeah. I
sad
mean,
thing. Like,
I
you're
get it.
just
Like,
beginning.
when you're that young and you have that much despondence thrust upon you from just day after day of negative emotions, it totally stands to reason that eventually your mind is going to break down, because you're young. You don't have all those battle scars to fortify you. So um yeah, like, bullying will happen. And when you see it, you should stop it, but we shouldn't try to be like making these preemptive strikes to prevent it from ever happening, is what I'm saying.
And maybe, yeah, like, we should understand that it's part of growing up. Like you said, having friends is really important. And if you're a friend to somebody and they're being bullied, you should absolutely have their back,
Mm.
because I've had friends have my back, and actually my very first bullying experience as a kid, I think I was probably in like second grade or something, and my friend, he was a little bit heavy, and another friend of mine, well, an acquaintance of mine, was mocking him, saying, "Oh, you're fat," da da da, and laughing at him, and he made my friend cry, and he kept going on and on and on about how fat he was and making fun of him and stuff. I just lost it, and I jumped down from the jungle gym, and I started punching him, and I stuffed his head in the sand and like started shoving sand in his mouth, and then so this acquaintance started crying, and the parents came over, and they were freaking out, thinking I was the aggressor, and I'm like, no, he was calling my friend fat and making him cry. So, to everybody out there, do that. Stick it. Well, maybe don't push your schoolmate's head in the sand and make him eat it,
I
or maybe, but stick up for people. Like,
I was
don't.
always a diplomatic placater. I was at this, I don't know, I think it was a Dairy Queen or something. I was playing on the little big toys they had or whatever. And I think I was going down a slide and some kid was, dilly-dallying at the bottom, and I hit him, and he started like overreacting and crying, and his mom came over, and my parents were like, oh crap, and they saw this. They were sitting inside, and they came out, and the mother's like chewing me out and stuff. My parents come over, and I was like, it's okay, I got this, guys.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and my dad was like, okay. And they stood back, and I just explained what happened to this lady, and everything was hunky-dory. It's like, my parents were really good about that. They were willing to let me take the reins when I said, hey, I got this. But
Yeah, and that's so rare these days.
yeah, but when I
But
asked for help, they also supplied it. So sometimes I look back and think like, oh, was I a coddled child? And it's like, well, no, I asked for help and
yeah,
got it. It wasn't like there was some vulture like waiting for bad things to happen to me, and it swooped down and protected me. It was like I had to, put the magic rings together and call the mighty parent.
yeah, yeah, and I think it's important for everybody, really. I mean, you could say for kids, but even for adults, like, don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it, because
Mhm.
we don't know everything. And
Yeah.
if somebody asks for help, try to provide it. Especially if they're inexperienced and they're young, like you and I have experience and knowledge and stuff like that, and people that are little kids don't. So yeah.
Yeah, experience is everything. Like, if you just think about it, like when you're looking for a job, what's the thing that people want most? Do they
Experience.
want your diploma, or do they want your experience? Well, it's probably going to be your experience,
Yeah.
you
That's a
know?
lot more valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you're depriving your kids of getting these experiences, how do you think they're going to be prepared for the real thing? You might be able to tell them, well, this might happen, but if they don't see it for themselves, you know,
Well, and yeah, and in the real world, there's no, you don't get a prize for losing. And I think that here's another thing, like the whole like booby prize they give to people. Everybody wins. Um, no, some people win, some people lose. And in fact, losing is far more valuable than winning, because when you lose, it it gives you that mountain to climb, like this impossible thing you have to overcome. And if you don't have that, if you barely try, or you just do an average job and you still win, you're never going to better yourself.
yeah, I I lost a spelling bee. I've always been a really good speller.
Hmm.
This you know, this sticks in my head because of that. I've always been a really good speller, but in the 7th grade, I lost a spelling bee on a clock,
Hmm.
like 7 o'clock or whatever, and it's because I didn't say apostrophe. I said OCLOCK, o'clock, and they were like, "That's wrong. You have to say O apostrophe CLOCK." And I was
Oh.
like, "What? That's not even a letter. We're spelling." Like, it got me thinking. You have to be a little more detail oriented in the future.
Yeah.
And that's an experience I probably wouldn't have driven into my head if I got a trophy for kind of getting a clock spelled right. you know
Yeah, exactly. That it goes back to the whole thing, like failure is valuable. Like it
Mhm.
is the greatest teacher. And so if you're, sports are a good example of that. The like I said, everybody gets a prize. No, only the winners should get a prize, because you have to have an impossible opponent to overcome. You have to have some kind of, it's like striving to go to the moon or something, or Mars. Like, there has to be some big, huge, insurmountable thing you have to overcome to make you better, to give you the drive to learn and improve, and give you some kind of opponent, I guess, something to fight against, because that is actually what makes people gives people the drive to improve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a million examples we could give of um, bad experiences that led to good lessons. But
Well, actually, yeah. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
no,
there.
go ahead, go ahead.
Have you ever seen the movie Inside Out?
No.
Okay, so that is a perfect movie that perfectly illustrates that point. And I think everybody should see that, especially parents. It made me cry as a non-parent. So it's a really good movie, but it definitely at multiple points illustrates how the negative experiences, what we think of as negative and harmful and risky kinds of things, are actually experiences that make us better
Yeah.
and give us more control over our lives and make us more independent. Um, and you're never going to get that if you're the boy in the bubble. If you have a perfect life, everything is spoon fed to you, you never have any trials or tribulations, you're gonna be the what is it, gold shirt Picard?
Turquoise or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to, adversity is what makes people, it forces you to have to overcome that adversity, and through that you become a much better person.
Yeah.
And,
Um,
oh,
it's been a while since I interjected any biology into our show,
hmm,
so I'm going to take the opportunity to talk about evolution.
hmm,
Um, when when we are when we are contributing to the gene pool, there are certain things that carry on before we know that they're going to happen. And by that I mean like Alzheimer's, which really only hits you at earliest in your 30s, but usually 60s, 70s, 80s. You can't possibly, well, I mean, now you can screen for it probably, but you couldn't possibly know, oh, hey, I should stop breeding because my kid might get this horrible disease or whatever. Same thing goes for personality traits and the like. So if you raise a weak, I hate to say, like a weak child or whatever that gets bullied and doesn't know how to stand up for themselves, um, there's also this uh, thing called epigenetics, and I don't know if this really applies here, but there's probably a psychological version of it that does. And if your child somehow, kitchen sink forbid, uh,
hmm,
meets his demise or her demise, uh, a sibling or a future child that you have would have that horrible negative experience to drive them to do better. There are terrible things in the world that can have so much positivity come out of it, and it can build a stronger human race in the long run, because those fortified genes, those experiences that get passed down in stories, things like that, build better genes and select for stronger people, because people tend to, gravitate towards like-minded people, and
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to think super long term, like way out there, it's better for us to face adversity than to shield ourselves from everything and just make the human race weaker and weaker and weaker.
Yeah, like what value is there in us simply existing? You made it through life. You were safe, but nothing remarkable came of it. And I think back to all of the greatest thinkers and creators and inventors through time. And they were not sheltered people. They had some pretty awful experiences, a lot of them. And I feel like those experiences were the things that kind of tempered them to be able to do the great things they did later in life.
Yeah.
Um,
Wasn't Tesla like from a destitute family that like came to America with $14 in their pocket or something?
yeah, I don't think he had much money.
Yeah.
But yeah, he molded the modern world. I don't want to hear anything about Edison. Um, but even Edison, he played a part. But that's the thing. Like it's those challenges and facing that adversity, and you sometimes you fall, sometimes you fail, every once in a while you die. But if you don't, we're all going to die. Because here's the thing, the universe is not a nice place. In fact, the universe wants to kill us actively all the time. And if we ever hope to be a spacefaring race or improve our lot in life, like we have to understand that. And
Yeah.
so
If we're not thinking about what might kill us, we're not going to be inventing things to prevent it from happening,
yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at like some of the greatest advances in technology, and they happened in like World War I and World War II, when some of the shittiest things were going on.
Mm-hmm.
You absolutely terrible things. And because of the fact that we were faced with those things, we were able to create some marvels of technology, which today are not necessarily used for warfare, but are used to improve our life. And it's the same thing with being a kid. Like that is how you prepare yourself to deal with the real world, which wants to kill you and is not going to be nice and is not going to give you a trophy if you fail. Like, we have to understand that that's how things are. And so we shouldn't, we should let our kids roam free and experience things and fail and stab a staple through their hands every once in a while, or like I did, try out a grappling hook and try to climb a tree, hit my head on a branch and fall and almost break my tailbone. I did that. Oh, and I also almost melted my hand with a soldering iron. Um, like, these are experiences that are actually valuable. Sure, there's short-term damage, but the long-term benefits far outweigh that. So, and there are very, very few white van puppy wielding abductors out there. There are a lot more real world dangers, risks that are don't have an intelligence behind them. Like, I see kids walking across the street texting on their phone or looking at something, and they don't even look. They just walk across the street like, well, yeah, they're going to stop for me.
Yeah.
That would be unheard of in my day.
Adults do that were raised otherwise. Like that just goes to show you that you can never let your guard down. Like,
Yeah.
you've got to keep learning.
Yeah, exactly. And don't become complacent, because those failures, those kinds of experiences you have, give you the kind of spidey sense, I guess, that oh, whoa, this is a sketchy situation, or oh, I should look before I leap. You're not going to learn that if you never get injured or have a dangerous situation where you almost die. And I mean, yeah, I think it's about all I have to say on that topic.
Yeah. So, we've covered a lot of things that will probably piss off a lot of parents, but I hope it makes them think more than react. Like I can see us getting a lot of hate mail on this one, which we love, but
Yeah.
because it keeps us on our toes. But I would urge you to think hard about what we're saying here, because after all, we've been kids, we've got experience, and we're introspective people, and we've looked at our experiences and we've calculated them on the chessboard of life and seen the advantages that have come from the difficulties that we've faced, and it has allowed us to become kitchen sink microscopists. So
Yeah.
here you go.
No, that's a good point. There's something to be said for the occasional putting your hand on the burner and burning it, sticking your grabbing a piece of metal and sticking it in an outlet and getting electrocuted. I've done those.
My dad did that. He stuck 2 keys in power outlets in the 50s, which didn't have a ground or anything. And the whole house went black, and he thought he broke the house.
Yeah. So as a kid, this is my journey into electronics. My parents had a dustbuster, and the battery, it was a NiCad battery, and it failed and didn't charge anymore. So they just tossed it in the bin. I grabbed it, took it apart, as I do with everything. And I was like, oh, this is a motor. And I thought, oh, cool, a motor. I want to get this motor going. So I pulled it apart and grabbed the leads and stuck it in the outlet. And it just went and spun up, turned completely bright red, and balls of molten copper came flying out of it and burned holes in the floor. But I learned from that. And it was valuable. Like I was like, oh shit, I should probably be cautious. Next time I do that, I'm going to think about it,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, experiences, even dangerous ones, are good. And yeah, I would love to hear people's opinions on this, especially parents. Like, what do you think about this? And do you think the idea of dangerous playgrounds is a good thing? Free range kids, that kind of thing.
Let your kids get scars, because every scar has a story, and that story could help someone else learn. And chicks dig scars. So,
well, yeah, and as a kid, it may be a non-life threatening scar, but the experience of acquiring that might save your life later down the road.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good place to stop. We've covered quite a lot, actually.
Yeah.
So
I didn't think this would go as long as it did, but
yeah, no, this is a good one.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for deep sink diving with us into the topic of everything revolving around kids and safety and letting go and the nest. Yeah.
And have a good night, and stick around for the song at the end of the show, because it's really good. It's for kids.
That's good. All right. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.
Flinching, punches landing, clenching, jaws and fists fly, screaming, face the bully, standing head held high. I'm reinventing anger. the fun.